Hello to everyone that is watching me. My name is Daniela Vinza da Costa, and today I'll be presenting about the Good Neighbor policy, especially the case of Zé Carioca. So let's get started. I hope you guys find this as interesting as I found when I was researching it. So, in the middle of the decade of 1930, USA created an international policy called the Good Neighbor. They had the intention of influence Latin Americans during World War II and to make Latin Americans more liberals and more make they tend more to free trade. So in the beginning of 1940, Franklin Roosevelt, there was the president at the time, as you can see the image on the right, he created the office of the coordinator of Inter-American Affairs, and he put Nelson Rockefeller as director of this office. The agency had a strategic office in Argentina, Brazil, and Chile, and was responsible for the good relations between the USA and some Latin American countries. They were also responsible for making a market for the USA products after the World War II in these countries. So Brazil was the main key for this good neighbor policy, since the USA wanted to establish military bases in the north of the country. Brazil is also the biggest country in Latin America, so it has a big influence over other countries. In that time, the Brazilian president, Getúlio Vargas, as you can see in the image on the right, was not so sympathetic towards the USA, and he was starting to get interested in policies that were being adopted in Italy and Germany during the war and the years before the war. So, to try to convince the Brazilian president to accept these military bases, to accept a more intense USA presence in Brazil, they offered the Brazilian government, a lot of money so the president could construct the first national steel company in Brazil. Because Vargas was really interested in the industrialization of Brazil at the time, he accepted that offer, and so the Good Neighbors started in Brazil. After they established this military bases, and Brazil was kind of already on the side of the USA in the war, they realized they had to create a more soft and intense way to influence Brazil outside the military sphere. So in the late 1930 to, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to, yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, I already passed that. But anyways, here are the information, the key elements, so it's easier for you to see. So in the late 1930s, two photographers were sent to Brazil to register the Brazilian day-to-day life and to get more of how Brazilians used to live and what they used to do, what they like, how they act. And 2 years later, Zé Carioca was born. So Zé Carioca, he was a Disney character that was meant to represent Brazil through its manners. He's charismatic, he's always happy, he sings, he dances, he drinks, he hugs people, he's always smiling, and he's supposed to represent what Brazil has as best. So to create him, the USA paid Walt Disney to create Zé Carioca as a way to have influence over Brazilian culture, and also to create a better image of the USA in Latin America through Zé Carioca's friends. That happened also because the former president of the United States had a kind more hard influence and presence in Latin America, so they were trying to change that image of USA as a hard country over America and change that for a more positive and friendly image. So the story of Carioca were made and think for kids, but the character ended up winning all publics from all ages. He was funny, he was always making jokes with Brazilian customs and also with Brazilian principles and day-to-day life. And he also shared his histories besides other Disney characters, but with some Brazilian famous figures of the time, such as Carmen Miranda, that was a really famous singer in that time. And it's funny because this character is still very, very famous in Brazil, and most people have no clue how he was originated. They just think he's Brazilian. They don't even know he's a Disney character. They don't make the connection between him and their characters. He's just a Brazilian character. I was talking to my family and I was asking them how much they knew about it, and they love him, but that's all they know about him. He's funny and he's Brazilian, and that's it. So because of that, I would say the project was very very successful, and here are some explanations for that. So this project possibilitated the installation of U.S. military bases in the north of Brazil, and because of that, Brazil also became an ally in the Second World War, even sending troops to help during the war. Of course, the Brazilian army was not that big and not that it didn't have that much influence, but it still helped and made the allies look better in the other continent. Also, the fact that Brazil chose U.S. To chose to support the U.S. during the war, it ended influencing other countries in Latin America. So almost all Latin American countries were allies in the war. Also, Zacarialca helped to open the Brazilian market to some North American products that were not even sold here before. So today we have brands like Coke and the ice cream Heart brand. They are so famous now today, and people all over Brazil consume them, but they are not sold in Brazil before Zé Carioca. This also helped the USA after the war, because of course Europe market was really weakened and people did not have money to buy all the stuff because the countries were destroyed after the war. So to have all this huge market that is Brazil was a great deal for the United States. These commercial opportunities also helped USA to recover from the economic crisis they were getting into from the Great Depression. Also, that was helped with the war. Of course, USA ended up benefiting from the war, but this whole new market that was open for them also helped a lot. The good relations with Latin American countries, especially Brazil, also guaranteed USA to have access to raw material for its production. As I said, the European market was destroyed after the war, so there was a lot of raw material they could not produce, and the USA was able to get it from Latin American countries such as Brazil. As I said before, they also were trying to get a better image for USA foreign relations, and that worked because they got a really better image outside USA, and people from Latin American countries started looking at the United States with another perspective. Many people don't think about this when they talk about the good neighbor policy, but because of this influence that the United States had during this war, it helped the United States in the Cold War. Most Latin American countries remained capitalist during the Cold War, and that is because of the influence the United States already had over those countries. All of this also affected the elections inside the USA because the government, as I said, had a really good image. So people would say the government was productive and it was working. So that party remained in control for more years after this policy. Of course, this whole this whole campaign had its critics, and they are pretty valid, I think. People claim that Zé Carioca was a really stereotyped vision of Brazil, and he was. Of course, Brazil is funny and is nice, and we smile, we dance, we sing, but that's not all we do. Brazil has other cultures, aspects, and problems, and Zé Carioca never talks about them. But also, people said that USA government had interests that the Brazilian government did not know. They were beyond the Brazilian government knowledge. I agree with that. I think the Brazilian government was kind of naive because they didn't look at the long term benefits they will have, just the short term. And of course, Getúlio Vargas was a good president. He's still known as a good president, but he kind of lost himself after that because of that and because of other factors, but that's not the subject here today. Um, but in my opinion, all critics and compliments aside, The fact is that this campaign was very successful and created a path for future ideas that now can be seen in other Disney characters. If that you're creating a character that looks like it's from somewhere. Now Disney has characters from Mexico, from Hawaii, they have from Sweden, Ireland, they have from France, they have from everywhere in the world, and that helps. That makes people like Disney. That makes people go to the parks. That makes people go to USA and receive North American people in their country with more caring, you can say. So yeah, the campaign has its bad sides, of course, but it was very very successful, and I think they accomplished every goal they had when they thought about it. So here are my sources if you want to check the information or if you want to do some research. One of them is in English already. Another one is in Portuguese, but the page automatically translates to English. So it's pretty easy for you to have access and to read on that. And yeah, I think that's it. I hope you liked my presentation. I hope you liked the subject, and I hope you found it interesting as I found it was when I was researching it. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for your attention. Have a good weekend.